Welcome everybody to this webinar and the presentation of the opportunity identification study on the Moroccan poultry sector. Today we will present the report and the findings and discuss the Moroccan poultry sector also in a bit of a broader sense. We have stakeholders here from both the Moroccan and the Dutch poultry sector that will also share their experiences. My name is Alwin. I'm the Africa Insights Desk coordinator, and I will be moderating the session today, as well as presenting at least a part of the report. For those who are not familiar with the NABC, we are the Netherlands Africa Business Council. We are a member organization with 250 members of companies that are interested to do business with and in Africa, but also African companies that wish to do business in the Netherlands. We are the leading organization in the Netherlands for trade facilitation between Africa and the Netherlands. So the program for today is as follows. We start off with the opening words of Nick Schelling. He is the agricultural counselor from the Dutch embassy in Morocco. Then we will continue to the presentation of the report by myself and my colleague Jan Hulsebos. Following the report presentation, we will have a short explanation on the RVO instruments that might be applicable for you by the business development coach of RVO, Alwin Quispel. And then following that, we will have an introduction of the panel members. We have three panel members with us. The first is Dr. Omar El Amrani. He is the Vice President of the Poultry Association of Morocco. We also have Bouke Hamminga from Royal Pas Reform, and we have Salim Amor, who's been active in Morocco for El Press, among others. Then a few household announcements. Firstly, the session will be recorded, so feel free to reach out to NABC to receive a copy. I think all participants will receive a copy, will be sent to them anyway. Stills from the recording might also be used in social media. Secondly, kindly use the chat to ask your questions during the Q&A part of the webinar, the last 20-25 minutes. And finally, the opportunity identification study itself can be downloaded from the RVO website, also from the NABC website, and it can be sent to you, of course, via email by RVO, NABC, or the embassy. And yeah, then without further ado, I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Nick Schelling for the opening words, the agricultural counselor from the embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in Morocco.
Yeah, thank you very much, Laurens, for this introduction. Dear participants, my name indeed is Nick Schelling. I am the agricultural counselor in Rabat for both Morocco and for Senegal. One of my tasks is to help you as companies exploring the Moroccan market. And that, of course, is where this meeting is all about. I welcome you all to this webinar about developments and business opportunities in the Moroccan poultry value chain. And a special welcome to our Moroccan speaker, Mr. Dr. Omar El Amrani, Vice President of the Moroccan Poultry Federation, FISA. Dr. El Amrani, thank you very much for sharing your experience with us. And of course, also a warm welcome to the other speakers to this webinar. And I would also like to thank the Netherlands Africa Business Council, NABC, and the Netherlands Enterprise Agency, RVO, both in The Hague, for organizing this business event. Yeah, in 2021, our office in Rabat and RVO have jointly commissioned a poultry sector study to NABC to describe developments and identify business opportunities in the poultry value chain. Poultry products such as meat, eggs, and also industrial ingredients are extremely important in Morocco. Chickens, meat, and eggs are appreciated in every social economic group in Moroccan society. It is a daily meal for many and also traditional food for all kinds of celebrations. As pork meat is lacking in the Muslim diet, poultry takes a very prominent place in the daily food. We see small, medium, and large-scale producers. We see integrators with animal feed and with slaughtering and further processing. And still there are many opportunities for further development. Well, of course, the next speakers will tell you more about this. And after the presentations, the floor will be open to you for discussion with the presenters. Thank you very much. I wish you a very nice webinar. And now I will give back the floor to Laurens, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick, for those opening words. Yeah, we will now dive right into the presentation of the report. This will be myself and my colleague next to me, Jan Hulsbos. He is the poultry expert at NABC. I will do the first part of the report, and Jan will close with the last part. I'll share my screen now. Okay. So indeed, the NABC was asked to write a report about the opportunities in the poultry sector in Morocco, to identify opportunities and see what the sector has to offer, also for the Dutch poultry sector, and where there is opportunities for investment and naturally also for trade. We found 4 high potential subsectors: feed processing, that is meat processing, production of day-old chicks, and also egg processing. These are egg products such as liquid, powdered egg, etc. Morocco's poultry sector has pockets of high capacity and quite modern companies who are also capable of export. But the average Moroccan consumer still also depends on small scale, undercapitalized, also under-regulated and perhaps inefficient poultry and egg production. This means that side by side, modern poultry production and traditional poultry production exist in Morocco. This is also a natural challenge for the Moroccan government. This is the challenge of modernization, namely that the intensifying agriculture results in higher productivity, but also renders the smallholder livelihoods that depend on smallholder farming unprofitable. Nonetheless, the modernization of the poultry sector is desired and perhaps also inevitable. Inevitable also because of the consumption patterns in Morocco. We can see in this graph the increase in meat consumption from 2010 to 2020. It has increased by 11-point-something%. Of course, there have been 2 incidental declines in consumption, one in 2016 as a result of avian influenza and its price increases, and more freshly in our memories, the COVID-19 pandemic, which also resulted in a decline in consumption. We can see at the avian influenza decline that it immediately bounced back the next year. Perhaps the expectations are the same for this year after COVID-19, but of course there is also now additional global pressure, so who knows where it's going to go. But we can clearly see a trend towards more consumption of chicken consumption. Started at 170 kg per person per year in 2010, and now it's 10% higher. Then there's egg consumption. We can see a very similar pattern here, starting at around 130, and 10 years later it's 177. Also the same incidence as avian influenza and COVID-19 declined the consumption quite a bit. But again, we also see that after avian influenza, the the consumption bounced back quite quickly. So let's hope this also goes for this year. The egg consumption in Morocco has thus risen over the past years, but the current consumption is still lower than, for example, Tunisia, or Algeria, or other countries in the region. It is artificially low because the Moroccan egg market is dominated by table eggs, whereas industrialized and non-industrialized bakeries, for example, account for only a very small part of the egg consumption because they rely on imported eggs. So where does this consumption pattern come from, the growth in both egg and meat consumption? One of the things is, of course, a growing middle class. Morocco's economy has recorded an average growth of 3.5% over the last 10 years. This is outperforming the average growth in the region of about 2.8%. Again, we can see in the graph clearly the effects of COVID-19. The World Bank expects that it will rebound with 4.2% growth this year. The overall GDP is dominated by the service sector. Only 15% of the GDP is provided by primary sector agriculture. But this sector is actually growing more rapidly than the secondary sector, the industrial sector. Then besides a growing middle class that will keep growing, is of course urbanization. Urbanization always plays a role when it comes to increased production in eggs and poultry and in agriculture in general. For the last 20 years, the average was 2% urbanization per year. We can see that it was about 50% halfway to the 1990s. Now we're at 3.5%. Urbanization means that people are relying more on professional farmers. There are more people in the city that don't provide food for themselves, which leads to intensification of agriculture in general. Another demographic note is that Morocco is still a relatively young country, although the share of the population that is below 15 is decreasing. Still relatively young, with about an average age of 29. So these are developments that push increased consumption. Then there's also an institutional environment that provides for growth in the poultry industry in Morocco. There's legislation that provides advantages for foreign direct investments. For example, FDI is protected against nationalization and expropriation. Foreigners can hold 100% of the share capital of companies that are operating in Morocco and can transfer these shares freely to non-Moroccans. And there is plenty of facilitation for capital and income repatriation. Then there was also the regional investment centers. We have them, of course, in the Netherlands as well, but also in Morocco. They try to actively attract foreign direct investment and can mediate between the public and the private sector. There is, since recently in 2020, a stronger emphasis on the regional investment center. They have gained financial and administrative autonomy, and are thus also a good place to start for anyone who's looking to invest in Morocco, and they're also in competition with each other, of course, the same as the investment centers in the Netherlands. In a broader sense, there is the Industrial Acceleration Plan. This is a multi-year plan. The current one is 21 till 25. The previous one was 2014 to 2020. And the aim is of the new plan is to generate basically the same results as the previous one, but in new regions and in new sectors. The idea is to encourage small and medium enterprises to merge and thus create larger, more capital-intensive companies. The Industrial Acceleration Plan is focused not necessarily on agriculture, but is quite broad. However, the poultry sector has also received attention from the government on its own, mostly through the Green Morocco plan. The government views the poultry sector as pivotal for attracting FDI and is an important player for employment and food security and trade, and also for the attraction of foreign currency, for example. Now, the Green Morocco plan was launched in 2008, and the idea is to mobilize investment towards agriculture. There is a big component there also for poultry. They have a number of grants, so there is an equipment grant for slaughtering equipment, packaging, egg processing, and other export-related investments. And there are state contributions for research and development, so the improved organization, supervision, and access to technology, specifically aimed at the livestock sector. And then there is, of course, the contribution to sanitary upgrading. There is a strong emphasis on hygiene and sanitation in Morocco. Jan will also speak on that a little bit more later. But this emphasis is visible also in the state contribution for more sanitation equipment and methods. Here we can see the targets and how far they were achieved. This gives the idea that the goals were quite realistic and achievable. Also because 2020 is a bit of a tricky benchmark year, mostly because it looked a lot better in 2019 because of the COVID-19 pandemic, which had its effects in 2020. So, for example, the goal was to have 900,000 tons of poultry production. Well, they got to about 87% of that, which is quite fair. The investments in the sector were achieved. It's for 1%. The goal was 13.8, and they achieved an investment. This is over 10 years, by the way. They achieved 13.7, as you can see in this graph. Here we can also see that the investments in the sector and the employment in the sector are following basically the same trend line. Well, this is also an indication of where the sector is in terms of modernization. At some point, you expect these lines to diverge somewhat. You can see the employment decline also because of COVID-19, and again in 2016 as a result of the avian influenza. But these are not part of the trend per se. I expect these to go back up again. Yeah, and so you can also see that the direct jobs and the indirect jobs are only differing in absolute numbers. Their trend is of course the same, but this is natural. And if we look at production levels of certain subsectors, we can see that the processed meat, industrially processed meat, has gone through a significant growth, 52%. Started, of course, a little higher in 2019, actually. Again, we can see COVID-19 and avian flu. This is a recurring theme if you look at the last 10 years in the agriculture/poultry sector in Morocco. So that has grown quite significantly, might have gone up to 100% if it wasn't for COVID-19. And then for feed and chicken production, we see that the growth was quite minimal compared to the other two, but they also suffered the most from the avian flu and the COVID-19 incidents. And if we look at the import of day-old chicks, we can see that the broiler day-old chicks, the import of them has increased quite significantly. So there is still increasing demand from abroad, while the layer chicks have declined. Of course, in absolute numbers, they're a lot less, but also their demand has, which could indicate higher production locally, domestically, I should say. Then I think it's good to dive into these subsectors more specifically. I'd like to ask Jan to share something about these.
Yeah, thank you, Lawrence. Well, then I will dive indeed a little bit more into the subsectors. We have seen already by the presentation of Lawrence that there is certainly growth going on in Morocco. And I will look at the 4 subsectors, how this is in the different subsectors. First, we will have a look at the feed sector. After that, the day-old chickens. The next one is egg processing. And finally, we will also look at the meat processing subsector. What are the developments and what are the things going on at the moment in Morocco? As we have seen already also in previous figures, North Africa is one of the fast growing feed regions in the world. There is absolutely expansion also in the feed production. At the moment in Morocco, it's roughly about 5 million metric tons per year. And 80% of this is for poultry. That is relatively a high share. The rest is mainly for the ruminants. But 80% for poultry is, well, that means that most of the feed factories are producing the poultry feed. A big problem, what we see in Morocco, but not only Morocco, I see it in many other countries, is the raw materials. The lack of the raw materials, certainly now it's getting even more and more worse the last year, and in this year certainly also because of the situation in Ukraine. Worldwide, the demand for example, maize or cereals is growing and the prices are getting up. And another thing, what is also often seen is, of course, the lack of knowledge of making a good quality feed, and also sometimes the equipment and the technology is not on the highest possible level. So there are certainly possibilities. At the same time, we have to be realistic. You cannot immediately sell the most sophisticated equipment to every country. It must also be possible to work with it. At the moment, next slide. At the moment, there are about 43 companies producing feed in Morocco, and they have a total of about 3.4 million tons per year poultry feed. The raw material prices are fluctuating. Also, the feed prices fluctuate throughout the years, but also sometimes between years, the prices can be very high in a certain period. Certainly, when the harvesting worldwide is on a lower level, prices immediately go up. Next one. Here we see the prices of the different kinds of feed used for the poultry. Well, these prices, I think they speak for themselves. There is not that much to add in euros. Also, well, the prices are clear, and as such, this is a development. Prices get more and more comparable all over the world. Almost, of course, not in the countries where there is a lot of raw materials like South America and so on, but these countries who have to import have to deal with a world market where prices of raw materials, of course, are more or less equal. Regarding the day-old chicks, as the poultry production is increasing, of course, there is also an increase in the demand for the day-old chickens. That's, of course, logic. This automatically, we have seen the figures of the imports, especially for broiler chickens. But of course, this means that there is also a demand for hatcheries and also for parent stock, for genetics in the country. And of course, this is something that in the future has potential, but also should be worked on to produce more in the country itself. Regarding day-old chickens and also regarding hatching eggs. Of course, in poultry, we always see that it is a cyclical production. There are always periods of over and underproduction. For example, here in Europe, this is Eastern, for example, when there is more demand for eggs. Well, in Morocco, Ramadan will certainly have influence. These are always things that happen. What could help in this is something that we will see a little bit later in my presentation, but that is the processing of eggs. That could help to take away the the overproduction of eggs in certain period and to bring them, for example, in further processed eggs. Looking at the tailed chickens, well, the figures we have already seen also in the graphs of Laurens, but yeah, we see that there is rather a growth prognosis for poultry. If you see the production of 855 in 2022 and 930 in 2025, which is an increase of about 10%. Well, of course, this is a big growth. So from that point of view, the future is bright in the poultry. There is absolutely a growing demand, which of course is good for people looking for opportunities in Morocco. When you see, by the way, consumption, which is also an interesting one, you see the consumption is even growing more relatively. That means that there is even a negative balance in the production. That means that there is even shortage of production, and we can also say, well, production should increase, absolutely, or imports should happen. But yeah, like for most other countries, preferably we should try to avoid imports and produce in the country itself. It's better, of course, for the economy. It's better for giving jobs to people. So, of course, the preference is in producing locally. Also, we see often that consumers prefer locally produced products. Then we go to the next subsector, egg processing. Yeah, this is a young sector, only 5 specialized companies at the moment in Morocco, and less than 1% of the eggs is processed. This is rather low. In EU, it is 17%. We see that more. In Europe, you see even first-class eggs, so good quality eggs, are even used for processing, where in the past, egg processing was mainly used for the second-grade eggs, so that means the eggs that were not suitable for table eggs. But at a certain moment, you see that the percentage of processed eggs is increasing in countries. Certainly, processed eggs have benefits. Well, the people who are active in this business, they know. But of course, processed eggs are they are pasteurized, so they are more sanitized. There is less risk of bacteria, and also, of course, the handling of processed eggs can be much easier if you talk about restaurants or bakeries or whatever, than if you have to work with normal eggs. There is certainly costs, of course, involved in the processing of eggs. Certainly, it is not a cheap activity. And that makes that, of course, to start such a business is not always easy. What we also mainly see with this egg processing is that in the beginning, it is focused on liquid egg production, what is also the situation in Morocco. Later on, when there are more possibilities and more technology available, we can go also to powder production. Of course, the good thing of powder is that it has a much longer shelf life. That could be interesting, but powder production, you need rather complicated and expensive equipment. Processed eggs are rather dependent on a cold chain. The cold chain cannot be broken in these processed eggs, so that's absolutely important to keep in mind. And as said already, this egg processing is a rather capital-intensive activity. And finally, it could also be the situation in Morocco that the consumers have a resistance against processed eggs, and maybe they prefer the traditional eggs. Yeah, this is something that needs absolutely time. On the other hand, you see more and more that during the time people get used to processed eggs, and at a certain moment they even don't ask anymore whether something is produced by when cookies or cakes or bread is produced by processed eggs or by fresh eggs. Finally, the meat processing. Yeah, also, of course, industrial processed meat is growing. There are a few large plants in Morocco. At the same time, also, still a whole lot of chickens is slaughtered live and sold live. And slaughtered in these small butcher shops, riachats. And in Senegal, we had something comparable also in a working group we were working on. This, of course, is not the ideal situation. Certainly, looking from the government side, we prefer more hygienic, controlled systems to produce processed meat. And these small processing plants, of course, it's very difficult to get them under control and to know exactly what happens there. Also things like waste materials, the blood, what is happening with it, this is all hardly under control. And of course, if you want to export your broiler meat, then the modern slaughtering plants, of course, are much better able to give a uniform, guaranteed quality. So for export, I think you need modern slaughterers. Finally, we see that there is a growing demand for mechanically separated meat or mechanically deboned meat. This is a rather expensive process, also comparable a little bit to powder production of the further processed eggs. But large processing plants will have this possibility. Well, looking at the meat processing and then comparing poultry meat with turkey, then we see that from the poultry meat, only a very low percentage, about 5 to 10%, is processed in industrialized processing plants, where for the turkeys, this is much more. And that means that this turkey industry is in a few hands and in an integration where this is all organized, where poultry is still kept rather a lot backyard, small farms, small processors locally sold live, which is a different kind of an industry. Yeah, the risks finally for the meat production, introduction and enforcement of regulations will, of course, determine the speed in which modern slaughterings can replace the riachats. At the same time, I can imagine that the government does not prefer to make too many regulations, but my experience is also if you want to go to these control systems where there is a control on hygiene and on production system, where there is a kind of ISO system, sometimes you have to make some regulations to get this done. The same counts, of course, for tradition. I can imagine certainly in the rural areas, the local customers, the rural people, have a big preference for live bought chickens and maybe slaughtered at home or slaughtered on the place where they buy it. These things need time to change. And then I think I go to Laurens again to do the last small part.
Yeah, thank you, Jan. I think what is also true in the sense of customer preferences is that customers tend to trust the live chicken to be slaughtered in accordance with the laws of Islam, that it's halal, and they have their doubts when it's industrially slaughtered. So that's also something to be aware of. Now, in general, I think this is kind of a summary, actually, of what we've just discussed. There are some gaps in the Moroccan market, the poultry market. These are not necessarily unique to Morocco, but nonetheless, they are important and they offer opportunities, I would say. So there is a lack of egg products in the sense that they are further processed. Egg powder and liquid eggs, for example, that can be used in industrialized bakeries and confectionery shops. So there's something there as well. Then, the majority of DOCs are still imported. This results in higher costs. feed produced is expensive and of variable quality. So also with regards to the ingredients of raw materials or the formulation of the feed, there are perhaps opportunities for those who have experience with that. I think the Dutch sector is very strong in that sector as well. So, for example, in mixing equipment, but also the formulas that make use of locally available raw materials could be very beneficial there. Then the meat processing. As said, 80 to 90% is informal and happens in the riachats. There's a support from the government in this sector to really modernize and industrialize. So really in the terms of equipment, but also chain control, how to make sure that things stay sanitary from farm to plate, basically. And when that is done, then there are also opportunities to perhaps even start with protein recycling. But before that can happen, of course, sanitary codes need to be up to standard. So this is in a nutshell the market gaps and the opportunities. So how to get to the market? Of course, there are numerous organizations that can assist you with this. First, I would suggest the Dutch Embassy in Rabat, of course, for the network and perhaps the programs that and the instruments that can support. Also, RVO has numerous instruments which Alwin will speak about in a minute. And then, as mentioned, the regional investment centers that can really negotiate between public and private sector and also have access to these grants, these subsidies, and the state compensation. And then there's the FISA, which is the Poultry Association of Morocco. They, of course, have the network. They are an association of other sector industries, subsector industries. So each part of the poultry chain is organized under the umbrella of FISA. And I'm happy that Dr. Omar Amrani is here, also the Vice President of FISA, to speak on that in a second. This was, in a nutshell, the presentation of the report of the Opportunity Identification Study. As mentioned, there is more in the report than presented here, so I would encourage you all to have a look at it. If there's any questions related to the report, then feel free to get in contact with NABC in reference to me or Jan, of course. Having said that, I'd like to give the floor then to Alwin Quispel from RVO to dive a little deeper into what RVO can do for you as a company if you are interested in getting into the poultry sector in Morocco.
All right. Thank you very much, Laurens, for, of course, the good report and the presentation that you just gave together with Jan. And also I'd like to thank the embassy for initiating this study. Happy to contribute to this. Hello, everyone. My name is Alwin Quispel. I'm a business development coach for Africa. I'm actually here on behalf of my colleague Renate, who couldn't make it. She's the business development coach who is responsible for Morocco. So you can see our contact details in this sheet. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions regarding, well, this study, but of course also doing business in Morocco or in any other African countries. Just briefly to highlight what I do, I'm working together closely with the embassies, in the Dutch embassies actually, in African countries in order to develop trade promotion. So we focus on several sectors, and we can organize trade missions. We do market studies, matchmaking, business consultation, all kind of things in order to stimulate the interest of Dutch private sector to invest or do trade with African countries. Last week I was in South Africa for a trade mission on digital transformation, focusing on e-health and cybersecurity. So it's a very broad range of things that we focus on. It's always focused on a sector approach, so not an individual country approach. That's good to mention. And within the African market, Morocco is one of the key markets for us, and in North Africa, it's number one. Furthermore, I work together closely with the private sector development coach who works mainly on the local private sector ecosystem and to strengthen that. So I did see a lot of training market gaps. So that could be something that the private sector development coach can look into. Yeah, so any requests, any things that you have, you can contact me or Renate, and we can see how we can assist further. Good to mention is that within RVO, we also have subsidies for companies that want to enter a certain market. The let's say easiest way to get some funding is, for example, if you need some legal support or want to do a brief market exploration. There's a subsidy called SIP Collectief, SIP, the Starters International Business. I think it's now recently changed to the name Support International Business, and it helps companies to get some information on well, the legal aspects of doing business or a brief market highlight. So that's something that you can look into. I'll share the link in the chat later. If you are a little bit further, if you're already kind of convinced that Morocco would be your dream destination, then you can look into the DHI subsidy, which is a demonstration, feasibility, or investment preparation subsidy. I think the maximum is about 200,000 euros, which is 50% that the government can support, and you have to invest 50% yourself. And it actually helps you to, for example, demonstrate your technology or your product to a market of interest. Another one is, as I said, the feasibility study, where you can do a feasibility study to get a better understanding of where you're actually going to. So those kind of subsidies will also really help you to kickstart your business in this case, Morocco, the poultry sector. If you are already a bit further in the process, if you already done your homework and really are ready to invest, then we can also link you with Invest International, the new state impact bank. They are focusing on agriculture, so also on poultry. Morocco is a focus country, and they give loans, mainly loans for starters. I think that's up to 800,000 euros. And also like the larger financing up to 30 million, if I'm not mistaken. So that's really capital that can be used to invest, to start your business or to grow your business in the respective country. So that's also something to look into. Again, as I said, if you are interested in any of those things or just want to have a brief chat to get to know each other and to see what options there would be for you, then feel free to reach out, and we are very happy to assist you. I'll leave it at that. I know always is a lot of information, so it's better to contact and to discuss in person in more detail. But well, thank you very much. Thank you again to NABC for organizing this, and well, I hope that we will be in touch soon. So have a good day and enjoy this webinar. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Alwin. And it's indeed good that you mentioned Invest International. That's one of our strategic partners since recently as well. So for the next part of the webinar, we will go to the stakeholders in the poultry sector. They will introduce themselves and speak a little bit about their experiences with in the poultry sector in Morocco. First is Dr. Omar El Amrani. He's the Vice President of FISA, as mentioned. Dr. Omar, thank you so much for joining us. I would like to ask you to introduce yourself and maybe speak a little on where you see the opportunities for the Dutch companies in the Moroccan poultry sector, and how you, for example, can relate them to the either the instruments that RVO has or things that came up in the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Lawrence, for your invitations and for a nice announcement. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Omar El Amrani, DVM, President of the Moroccan National Hatcheries and FISA Vice President. On behalf of the FISA presidents and council members, I'd like to thank you for joining this webinar. Thanks and congratulations to NAB, the Netherlands Africa Business Council, also to the Netherlands NBC in Rabat and RVO, Dutch Enterprise Agency, for having organizing this great event focusing on the business opportunities in the Moroccan poultry sector dedicated to the Royal Dutch private enterprises and investors. It will be my pleasure to introduce FISA as the Moroccan Poultry Sector Federation and highlight in few words its contribution to the Moroccan poultry sector upgrade.
Perhaps you can go full screen. We can now see the...
Okay, I'm trying right now. Here we are.
Yes.
So FISA organization is gathering 5 associations representing main poultry industry chain value. There is Feed Meal Manufacturing Association called AFAC, ANAM, which I'm representing, the Moroccan National Hatchery Association, EPV, the National Poultry Meat Producer Association, ENPO, the National Table Egg Producer, and finally the ANAVI, which is the National Meat Processing and Slaughterhouse Association. FISA was the first agriculture interprofessional federation emerged in Morocco since 1995 as an organization and federation, and the first federation to be recognized among 19 agriculture and fishery federations in Morocco, according to the Act 0312. Few words on this act. It is detailing the common and specific rules to be achieved to guarantee all agriculture and fisheries actor legal representation. 3 main principles are recognition of only one federation per agri-production sector, the obligation to comply with the rules of good governance, legal statutes, rules of procedure, and obligation to audit accounts. And third point is institution for each federation to financial resources autonomy throughout cuts and or member contribution applied on selected major chain value inputs. For the poultry, we choose the corn, the chicks, and the poults. So FISA has been recognized as the sole representative federation for the poultry industry sector in Morocco in March 15, 2017. FISA has also a regional representative delegation in main cities throughout the country in charge of downloading the FISA poultry sector strategy close to its members. FISA's main aim is to develop the Moroccan poultry industry capacities in terms of productions, sale marketing, and highly product with optimal competing prices. Sorry. Our mission is to improve the economic and technical environment of to efficiently produce and sell the poultry product, set profound communication channel with the host administration to assume a sustainable development of poultry sector, inform, educate, and perform authentic guidance to poultry industry actors and consumers, and promote the quality and consumption of poultry products. Our targets are, of course, our body members, government administration, consumers, and general media. So FISA has a large partner network, either institutional and non-institutional one. So there is the Moroccan Ministry of Agriculture, Sea Fishing, Rural Development, Water and Forest, Ministry of Industry, Trade and Technologies Transition, Consumer Association and Federation, Bank Group, mainly Credit Agricole. We have a tight relationship with the U.S. Grain Council and U.S. Soybean Export Council, agriculture universities, the Institute of Agronomy of Hassan II, National Order of Veterinary, and the Moroccan Agriculture Mutual Insurance Company, MAMDA. FISA is considered a member of the CGEM, the Moroccan General Business Confederation, the Moroccan Export Association, ASMEX, the Standalone Office of Control and Coordination of Export, FOODEX, the Moroccan Confederation of Agriculture and Farming Development, COMADER, for which we are assuming the General Council, and we are member of International Poultry Council, EPC. So FISA has a wide communication channel through first regional outreach meeting taking place periodically in each occasion required, monthly economic news letter, Dawajin Conjuncture, quarterly magazine of information, Dawajin Info, FISA website, Moroccan Egg website, Anavi website, and social network. Edition also of and diffusion of booklets, leaflets, and unfolding. FISA is also attending along with members at the many foreign exhibitions over the world, IPPA Atlanta, and also Vivenue, MEA, Asia, and Europe. One of the major communication channel for FISA is the Casablanca Annual Poultry Exhibition, Dawajin. Here are some figures on the last edition and achievement in 2019. 200 booths, 400 exhibitor and branch, 50% as foreign exhibitor, over 30 countries representative, and 12,000 national and international visitors. And as per opinion polls figures, 87% satisfaction as for organization and 86% exhibitor goals achievement. We will be very glad to welcome you to the 23rd edition, which will be held in Casablanca CSEC Expo Center in November 22 to 24. FISA runs also a training center called Avipol, exclusively dedicated to poultry ongoing training. This Avipol is a part of interprofessional technical center for development of animal production, Zoopol, which have been inaugurated in May 2050 by His Majesty the King Mohammed VI. This training and educational center contains some facilities for practical training. There are 3 broiler houses, 1 laying house, 1 hatchery, 1 feed manufacturing unit, one industrial poultry slaughterhouse, 1 small local slaughterhouse, and administrative and multi-educational spaces. Our main target audience is professionals and employees from the national poultry sector, apprentices and students from training school for livestock, poultry and agriculture, young poultry project holders, professionals from abroad, mainly from African country. We deserve many technical school, a wide program during the last couple years, either in Visio. So, thanks to the close collaboration between FISA and all the stakeholders in the poultry sector, mainly the Ministry of Agriculture and the ONSA, which is the National Food Safety Authority, we contribute as FISA to establish the regulation for the poultry sector since early 2002. And we contribute in Act 49/99 related to the sanitary protection of poultry farms, production control and trade of poultry products. Also the Act 2807 related to feed and food sanitary security, and Act 0412 related to the agriculture aggregation. Today's Moroccan poultry industry is under authorization by the ONSA, the National Food Safety Authority. We count 43 feed miller, 45 broiler hatcheries, 3 layer hatcheries, 3 turkey hatcheries, over 7,600 broiler grower and almost 900 turkey growers, 251 egg producer, 27 poultry processing plants, and 18 poultry meat mechanically separated preparation unit VSM. Egg processing plants counts 3 units. FISA was the first agriculture federation to bind the contract program for the period 2009-2030 with the government and the Moroccan agriculture green plan launched in 2005. And thanks to the actor dynamism, endeavor, and devotion, the objectives assigned to this contract were early achieved in 2010. This is how a second program contract was set and signed for the period 2011-2020, and the achievement, it's over 80% achievement. Total goals have been done. Meanwhile, the FISA takes part also to a third program contract launched by the government for the period 2017-2021, which was dedicated mainly to incentive for all agro-industrial sector, and it serves the hatchery and the processing plants. Then there is a last program contract for the period 2021 and 2030 under the name of the GG30 government strategy, which is currently on the process of being ratified between FISA and the Moroccan government. Here are some figures about the 2030 goals and what about the position in 2021. And we can say that we are almost 70 to 80% achievement from the total goals projected in 2030. So today, the poultry sector is currently covering the needs of the country at the level of 100% of poultry meat requirement, representing 55% of total meat consumption, red and white meat, 100% of consumption of egg requirement. It covers more than a third of the animal protein source for the Moroccan consumers, and the cumulative investment in the poultry sector counts 1.3 million euros in 2021, and total turnover is about 3 billion euros, which represent 3% of the total Moroccan GDP. The poultry sector assure its social part. It's almost 465,000 jobs, either direct and indirect, in the poultry sector. You can see in this figure the poultry meat production by 2021. It was 525,000 tons for broiler meat, and against 115,000 tons of turkey meat. We produce almost 5.5 billion table eggs. The white meat consumption per capita per year is about 19.3 kg, in which turkey is about 2.3, and table eggs consumption reached 176 eggs per capita per year. There is some trial to export of poultry products. It's remain very modest, but it's evolving from year to year. And for 2021, we succeeded almost 61 million hatching egg export and almost 3 million chicks to the West African country destination, mainly Mauritania, Mali, Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, Benin, and Gabon.
Dr. Omar, to make sure that we have also enough time for the other panel members,
okay.
Please try to
2 or 3 slides and I will be finished. So,
okay, perfect.
As mentioned during the presentation, our current challenge is the poultry sale. It skips mainly traditional live market, 80% live market, through the live poultry wholesale market, traditional slaughters, and the feeder in United Riachat mentioned it before, direct to the households. The modern pattern, the path is 20%, and it's 2/3 dominated by turkey against 1/3 broiler. Poultry slaughterhouses accredited and controlled by the ONSA are the sole eligible to supply supermarkets, collective catering, modern sales unit. So even though the traditional live market and the riachet slaughter point answer the consumer habits and constitute a big commercial interest for local sites, it remains a big concern for the sanitary upgrade. So FISA promoted since 2017 with the government and an interministerial decision is to transform this riachet by two ways. To comply with the special requirement of a small model slaughterhouse units dedicated to the household supply exclusively, or to switch to a modern sale point of processed poultry meat supplied directly from the industrial slaughterhouses approved by the ONSA. Both are subject to ONSA authorization and government subsidy as incentive. We support the government support almost 3,000 euro, which is quite 50% of the total cost of this transformation. And for every new poultry sale point authorization, a prerequisite approval issued by the Municipal Health Commission is required. So to conclude, I can see that the Moroccan poultry business has consequently evolved the last 20 years FISA birthday, thanks to all the poultry stakeholder contribution and collaboration of government, FISA, ONSA, and other partners under the principle of the 3P, public-private partnership. Certainly a lot have been achieved upstream, but poultry sector challenges and permanent evolving potentialities will always open more and prospect for all the stakeholders to innovate and perform better, either up or downstream the poultry chain. And I can see that FISA would be glad to bring its support as usual to NAB and the Netherlands enterprise and investor better understanding and identifying business opportunities in the poultry sector for Morocco. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Omar. I see that a lot of our numbers are aligned, so that is a good sign. Also, not a coincidence, of course. Would it be possible to get the presentation to make that available for the participants of today?
Of course, I will send it to you by mail. Okay,
perfect. Thank you so much. Then we will move on to our next speaker, Bouke Hamminga from Royal Pas Reform, who have been active in Morocco for quite a while. Thank you for being here, Bouke, because even you had a very busy travel schedule as usual, but so thank you for making the time and joining us today. I hope you can share something about the investments of Pas Reform or the activities of Pas Reform in Morocco, and how you see the opportunities for the Dutch sector.
Yeah, what I did, guys, is that Laurens and Jan, what I did is I actually prepared a few slides. I think we are a bit tight on time also. So what I'm going to do, how do you say, do 2 slides on what Pas Reform does and what we have done, and then directly go, I think, to what is our experiences of doing business in Morocco, what's the good parts, what's the bad parts, where we see opportunities and where we see challenges. And I hope I can do that in about 10 minutes, guys. I'm going to share with you my screen. I think if you can tell me when you can see my screen. I think by now you should be able to see it. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, we can see your screen.
Okay, good. Well, what I'm going to tell you a little bit about Pas Reform and then doing business in Morocco. So I'll skip quite a number of slides. Any slide I have here can be seen later, and I'll share this with you, Jan. That is not a problem. I'm for the last 20 years, I'm the commercial director for Pas Reform, for Royal Pas Reform since 2019, and we are one of the suppliers of hatcheries around the world. We do around 30% of all the hatcheries in the world we supply, but quite a bit of that is also in Morocco. We have been building in Morocco since, I would say, since the 90s. We have been working in Morocco. We've been working with Dar Felous, with Maroc Dende, with Delta V, with Sopraf, with Fislin, with Grapolima, with Atsal, with, wow, that is a very long list of people that have hatcheries from us. I want to share with you, we are 100 years old, we have 150 people, and we work around the world. The machines that we bring out, or the hatcheries we build in Morocco, They all come from the Dutch base. We have a base in the US and a base in Brazil. So we actually work a lot with agents and distributors in these countries. And especially in Morocco as well. We work together in Morocco with Agriart, that is Voetmerk Voer, and they are very helpful in getting business going in Morocco. I think importance of having an agent in Morocco is the fact that you are locally represented, you have a local service organization, local spare parts. That, for instance, for doing an export project or doing a project for a Moroccan customer in Morocco, that's one of the essential parts, I think, of what they can do. I'll go there one minute also again. Our global presence, we deliver to all the countries in the world, basically, where there is poultry, to the big ones, to the smaller ones as well. But I'm always, in all honesty, I'm always impressed by the size of the market already in Morocco. I just saw a slide that says that the majority of the day-old chicks is imported in Morocco. I think the Moroccan industry is already in such a stage that the majority of what they need locally is locally produced, because there's really big hatcheries that are being built in Morocco, and that are built that continue to be built in Morocco, and that brings me to my my slide on what's the opportunities. I've really seen for a long time, for many years, that this is within the Maghreb region a very well developed industry. I'm impressed by the professionalism of the people that you're there. So don't think that you need to bring in technicians or technical people in order to do business in Morocco. There is plenty of well-trained, well-educated people in Morocco. You actually see them at this moment also being active in other countries. And Dr. Omar mentioned it. I know that some of the groups that are at the moment active in Morocco with hatcheries are also investing in day-old chicks export, or in actually setting up hatcheries in Mauritania, in Mali. So there is already a leading role for Morocco in this, what would you call it? It's the northern part of West Africa, maybe. It's not so much into Nigeria, it's not so much into Ghana, but it's very much into that area. Like I said, it's Senegal, it's Mauritania, and there they can, I think, play an important role. What we have seen as challenges over the last years is that sometimes getting payments is challenging. And that has not to do with that people would not like to pay, but just a complication. It's very difficult for Moroccan companies to pay for spare parts without opening an LC. And that's why it's important you have your local presence, so that people really locally have available spare parts that people can buy in their local currency, and then have one source where you actually, on an LC, you export your spare parts to. That has really, we've really seen it as a struggle. People would like to pay you cash sometimes because they have trouble getting it done in a regulatory way, especially for spare parts. Yeah, it has been for us, and I think that's important to tell to the other Dutch people that may listen and that would like to go into Morocco. It's been a profitable market for us. It's not been a high-rise profitable market, but it's been a very fair profitable market with us, with what I said already, very educated customers. There has been, and that maybe more like 10 years ago, when I started coming to Morocco, that was 2002, 2003, there was always people that said, don't bring the latest technology out. The country is not ready for accepting the latest technology. We have never done so. We have always brought out the latest technology. And I think that is what you can do, because whatever we can handle in the US or Europe, people in Morocco can handle as well. And I've seen extraordinary results with our equipment in Morocco. Yeah, what you need to do, but that is something in our case, because it's incubation, we have seen that the business has changed from multi-stage incubation to single-stage incubation. It takes too long to explain all that, but that means that part of, let's say, biological technical support is very often very much appreciated by people in Morocco. And we've done like week-long academies as well. And that brings you very close to the customers in Morocco. And it's a very good way of training people, but also showing the people amongst each other that they can actually learn from each other. It is important that I have found out that you have your brochures and your materials that you bring, that you have it at least available in the French language. I mean, everybody, I think in Morocco, I've always found an understanding here that we don't have everything in Arab and that we don't speak Arab. The people that come from Western Europe, well, a lot of them don't. I don't know about Mr. Salim. He may be fluent in Arab. He's probably fluent in Arab, but at least be sure that you can communicate in French. Communication in French is enough to be successful for business in Morocco. And lately, I would like to say, because I have heard a lot of, and I wrote it down while we have the presentations already, I heard the RVO saying that there's all kinds of subsidy schemes available. There is, and I would like to, and anybody that's interested can give me a call afterwards. There's a very simple system available through Atradius, which is called supplier's credit. That means Pasreform, we as a company, we give a credit to a local company. We can do it at extremely competitive interest rate. The interest rate at the moment is at about 3%. There's no collateral asked. We don't need any collateral from our customer. We can give loans up to 3, 4, 5 million euro. It does not block any local cash flow that you may have agreed with your local bank. As I said, there's no collateral involved in it. And it's not a banking agreement that you have to enter into. You only have to enter into a purchase agreement with Pasreform as a company. And I think that could be very, very attractive for people. Point one, for people that are in Morocco and that want to go and set up a hatchery, but equally so a processing plant or a broiler farm or a breeder farm. And also for companies that may be watching that say, hey, I want to export my goods to Morocco. This is also a good way of getting paid. You know, I may have to leave it at that, Laurens and Jan. If any questions later on, obviously I'm available.
Yes, thank you very much, Bouke, for your valuable insights and very practical advice. I think a lot of the companies listening will definitely check out your presentation again to see the exact tips and tricks you have. Very valuable. Thank you for that. Again, if people have questions, then they can ask them in the Q&A thing in Zoom. Then next, we will move on to Mr. Salim Amour. He is the Director of Bio and Eco Solutions and also works for Elpress. Thank you, Mr. Salim, very much for being here and having a little bit of patience. I would like to ask you also to share your experiences well with Dutch companies in Morocco, and where do you see the opportunities and for the Dutch sector in Morocco, and how you perceive the future of these two countries.
Okay. Hello and welcome all to this webinar. My name is Salim Amour. I'm the Managing Director of Bio and Eco Solution, which is hygiene and safety supply based in Morocco. I'm very delighted to get this opportunity to promote doing business in Morocco and to speak about our successful partnership with Alpress BV. I don't want to come back on all what have been said about the poultry sector in Morocco, but there are some key figures that I was wondering to rise up, and especially total investment amount, which represent over 40% of the sector turnover, which demonstrate that this sector is really in a big boom. I said, if Morocco is self-sufficient in poultry meat and in eggs and the production of table eggs, there's still some weakness holding the sector back. And real challenges right now, I think, is there are opportunities to export to the EU, UK and US market, especially within the halal label. Now there are, these opportunities they are facing higher cost and drastic quality and safety requirement for these countries, which will import from Morocco. Therefore, there is a need for modernization of the breeding and production process. This is really corroborating with this green generation that was launched in 2020 and which will lead until 2030. There is also a need for upgrading the supply chain because there is a weakness on that level, and also there is a need to enhance the quality and ensure more the food safety. And of course, all this, it requires investment. And when I'm speaking about investment, is a need for equipment, but also a need also for new professional players, new professional investors that can come and organize more and more and bring up, let's say, more good results for this sector. In this sense, I mean, for enhancing the quality and ensuring the food safety, we worked with Alpres BV on promoting hygiene in the food industry in general, and namely in the poultry sector. And this partnership started really very shamefully in 2015. And today we are considered among the top 3 hygiene, I would say, reliable hygiene supplier in Morocco. Our turnover is increasing by at least 10% each year, and we are very happy of that. Our partner also, Alpres BV, is very happy. I mean, of what we are achieving, both of us. Here are some projects that we've achieved in Morocco. The first in the slaughtering house, where we installed open cleaning system and utensil washer to optimize cleaning efficiency. We also installed hygienic entrances to ensure that hygienic condition for employees getting inside the production area and the slaughtering facility. Another project also in the dairy industry, where we installed the open cleaning system and hygienic entrances, but also pre-washers for much efficient and quick cleaning of crates being used hugely in the dairy sector. Here another project in fish canning industry. This is an ongoing project where we took in charge completely the drainage system, and we are installing right now open cleaning system on all the hygienic entrances. This is a big project of 22,000 meters square built that is being now installed at 60 kilometers from Casablanca. I mean, lastly, what I was wondering really to introduce is this Morocco Now concept, which has been recently launched by Morocco in Dubai, which is aiming really to attract foreign investors. What I need to emphasize that there are some attractive tax systems applied, especially for free zones. We do have now, I think, at least 4 free zones or 7 free zones in Morocco, and there you do have really no taxes to pay, no clearance, and you need only to, to process your good and to re-export, and you do have special funds granted from Morocco for the foreign investors. The speakers before was telling about that. I have to say that also Morocco is very political and economically stable country, and this is, I think, the sole country that kept stable in the Arab, let's say, region. As the speaker was telling, we are having very qualified and competitive labor force. So this is really very helpful. For new investors that you will launch your business. You don't want to need to bring with you technicians from the Netherlands to probably just for installing, but you have all the competitive and qualified labor force to do that. Last, Morocco is really right now regional exporting hub, and in this sense with Alpress right now we are serving all North Africa and Senegal. We started also with Benin very recently, and we're working now to start serving Mali, Burkina Faso, and Ivory Coast. So there is a potential, I would say, business that can be done in Morocco. Our partnership with Alpress BV is demonstrating that, and we are, as I told you, increasing each year, getting much more project. Each year we are getting more and more project, and hopefully also some of you, when they will start business there, we will be there. To install for them hygiene and to make for them hygienic equipment to ensure all the food safety and things like that. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Salim. You have a good perspective since you are on the crossroads between the Morocco and Dutch enterprise. Let me see. So we thank you all panel members for your presentation and your introduction. We have one question from the audience. It's a very practical one, actually. It's for Mr. Hamminga. Mr. or Mrs. Dasselaar asks, I don't speak French, but I do speak the Moroccan Arabic dialect. Would that be adequate, or do I really need to be able to speak French or Arabic? I think if Bauke is not here, then I think maybe.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yep.
Yeah. I guess I said French because I have assumed that a lot of the people are from Dutch origin on the webinar. I guess that if you speak Moroccan local language and Moroccan, that you're absolutely fit to do business in Morocco. That's absolutely no problem. It was more from a mention of inabilities for West European people to speak Moroccan language. And then French is a good alternative, but you speak Moroccan, that would probably be even better.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. So if there are no other questions from the audience, we are actually at the end also of the allotted time. It's 4:30 exactly. As mentioned, the poultry sector report will be sent to all the participants. Together with the webinar recording. So you will find that in your email short enough. I would like to thank, of course, our panel members, Salim Amour, Bauke Hamminga, and Dr. Omar El Amrani for their contribution and sharing their experiences. If you could send your presentations to me as well, then I will make sure to share them with anyone who would like to have them. And then, of course, I would like to thank Nick Schelling from the embassy and Alwin Quispel from RVO. Maybe Nick, you would like to say some closing words?
Yes, Laurens, that would be my pleasure. I will keep it very short because I think we have already had a lot of useful information. I believe that the presentations have given us a very good understanding to prepare ourselves for doing business on the Moroccan market. And we heard about let's say, the growing consumer, but also the industrial markets for poultry products, the development of the middle class, urbanization, the development of the supermarkets is on the rise. We also heard about the importance of processing capacity of meat, eggs, and of course, slaughtering. And I think also very interesting from Dr. Omar El-Amrani, we heard about the achievements so far in poultry, but also about the ambitions of the poultry sector in Morocco. Yeah, also there was a lot of attention for sustainable development, I think, like the reuse of processed water, the processing of waste products, and of the processing of manure. And I think we also heard about the support instruments. We heard about RVO, and I also heard the name of Atradius, also very important for trade. We heard also, and I think I can only confirm that, we heard about the high level of experience of Moroccan experts. That is certainly a great help in further developing the poultry sector. And of course, we also heard about the importance of hygiene in the poultry sector, of animal health. So, and what I also heard from the last speakers was that Morocco could also be a step up to other countries in Africa. So that makes Morocco, I think, extra interesting for doing business. So, yeah. Indeed, I confirm, Laurens, I invite you all to read the sector report that you will receive, and also the other reports that will be sent to you. And indeed, do not hesitate to contact us, either NABC or RVO, or FISA, of course, or us at the embassy. And my conclusion is that Morocco is offering interesting opportunities in many parts of the value chain. And the Moroccan business community, as we heard from Dr. Omar, is waiting for you to further explore concrete opportunities and reach your goals. Well, that's my story. Now, I would like to thank all our speakers, both from the Netherlands and from Morocco, for all their presentations and their efforts to give us this information. And I also would like to thank you, the audience, for your interest in Morocco and its poultry sector. And of course, last but not least, to Jan and Laurens and Alwin, thank you very much, NABC, RVO, for organizing this very nice webinar. It was great to be with you. Thank you very much, all of you. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Nick. And yeah, I think with that, we can close it. Thanks, everyone, also in the audience. I hope you have a wonderful evening and all the tools you need to start doing business in Morocco.